To answer the questions, and members, if you have any follow-up questions, kindly place them in writing for response at a later session.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I took notes from 20 questioners from the House, and I did answer the questions directly from the Leader of the Opposition. So I will now respond to the member from Eastern Westmoreland. Mechanism for making allocations for preventative maintenance, whether or not, the question was whether or not I thought that that process was sufficient. And I would say, obviously, member, there is no perfect mechanism. And whenever these weather events occur and we have to make estimates. So, for example, we thought that when Melissa was coming, it would have hit the eastern end of the island. As it turns out, it went more southerly and westerly. So it's very difficult to make the allocations, especially on unpredictable events such as weather events. The prepositioning of aid. My understanding is that there was prepositioning, particularly at parish councils and other such installations. But I am not hereby saying that there was prepositioning of aid at every parish council. But yes, there was prepositioning. The accurate account of death. This is of particular concern to me because the death toll, the last figure I heard was somewhere in the region of 32. But there are deaths that have not yet been, we know them, but we can't account as to whether or not they were directly related or indirectly related. And so they are going through that process, as well as there are deaths which we know of, but we haven't yet recovered the bodies. Yes, and people have resorted to burying. However, just to be clear, we will recover all bodies, even if we have to exhume. And we will go through a process of proper identification and, where possible, determination of death. The science is there to do it, and we will do it. We have to account for every Jamaican who lost their life, because we have to account to their families as well. And we have to get a full understanding of the impact of the disaster. I'm told that your constituency so far has the highest number of deaths as a result of the passage of the hurricane. So we have some forensic teams here, and they are already starting to do the forensic checks on the bodies that they have recovered. I want to say to Jamaicans that we should prepare our minds that the number of deaths may be more than what we are already hearing, because we can't tell you now that we'll recover everybody right away. It does take some time, especially in communities that are marooned. And it is really unfortunate, but it is just the reality of the situation when you are hit by a Category 5 hurricane. You asked about assessment for deploying assessment personnel. You asked that question, the member from West Central, St. James, and others asked that question. So the Ministry of Labour and Social Security does not have enough social workers to cover the assessment that will be needed. So what we're doing now is to look internally in government to see what other resources we have that could be deployed to augment that. Before the hurricane, I had given JDF the directive that they must augment the resources at the Ministry of Labour and Social Security to do the assessments, going to the communities and the building assessments, people who need aid, all of that. So we are looking at the SDC officers, we are looking at all of those, the CDF officers, all of those entities, and in addition to the registry of volunteers that we are creating. So though we don't have enough to do the assessment, we project that we will have a good core of assessment personnel, and we are giving ourselves 2 to 3 weeks to have that stood up properly. But it doesn't mean that work starts in 2 to 3 weeks. We start with what we have, and we expand and scale up. So that's the answer to that. You asked if I thought the conditions in shelters were adequate. I'm going to answer the shelter questions all in one. No, I don't think the conditions in the shelters are adequate. No Jamaican could say that. I have toured shelters on several occasions, not just in this disaster, but in several others. And you can understand why people don't want to go to shelters. It's a last resort. But, you know, this is what shelters are, not just in Jamaica, in Katrina, in all the other hurricanes and things that have happened. It's the reality of shelters. They're not the most comfortable of situations. But our situations here, though, I think we can do better as a government, and we should strive to do better. We can't argue that case. The challenge with our centers, however, and the question was asked whether or not we should build, I believe the member from Southeast Centre asked whether or not we should build purpose-built centers. And I'd answer you this way, member, no, we should not build purpose-built exclusive centers. We should build facilities that can withstand disasters, that can double as shelter when needed. That's the answer. So the issue comes down to shelter selection, and many shelters that were selected that just did not withstand the hurricane. So we have to do a better job at shelter selection. But the decisions that we have to make now in the rebuilding is whether or not we are going to rebuild some of these facilities in the way that they were built before. So we have to make decisions about concrete roofs, about the strength of having a strong, or what we call a safe room. So these are decisions that we will make to improve the quality of facilities that would be available for shelters. I'm going to deal with the issue raised by the member from Central Westmoreland. But when I get to that, when I get to your questions, but you did raise some shelter questions. And if I think that there was enough food provided for the shelters, absolutely. I mean, obviously no. The way in which the shelters operate is that they can't put all the stock in the shelter all at once. The concept of the shelter is immediately you get enough to probably carry you through the storm and immediately after, and then you're restocked. With a Category 5 hurricane, the best laid plans with a Category 5 hurricane will be destroyed. That's just the reality. So no, we obviously didn't have enough food in the shelters immediately after. And that is something we will have to look at in our planning for the, God forbid, for the next disaster. But we will have to take a second look at that. The issue of urgent care after the disaster is one that we are very much seized of, meaning people who probably have a cut, or they've fallen and broken their arms, or they need access to their medicine. So what Minister Tufton has been moving around and trying to do is to mobilize mobile centers. So the NHF has already mobilized their mobile pharmacy and mobile clinics. And I'll ask him to give an update as to where these are and how they can be accessed, meaning that MPs can say, could I have it here, could I have it there, schedule created, so that it can move around and everybody can get some access to it. And then the use of modular or prefabricated housing, containerized housing solutions. As I've said, I've tasked Minister Montague to look at what is best in class for this, to see whether or not we can get them in quantities that we can deploy, and then to answer the question posed by the member from St. Andrew Southwest as to whether or not the rules of government, I suspect you mean ownership. Once we give them, we usually give them, it becomes their property, but it really depends on the land on which they're going to keep it. So we'd have to make sure there's some permission from the people who own the land when we put the containers on it. So that's basically the answer for that. It shouldn't be a big issue, but at least permission to use. Yes. All right. Member from Central Westmoreland. Should there be a special allocation for constituencies that have a higher density of wooden houses? Very a novel consideration, obviously. And I see that you're trying to be a good MP, utilizing your special condition to appeal for special resources. But it's something that I would have to think of. I don't want to tell you no, but it's something I would have to think of very carefully, because that means I would open the door to somebody and saying, you know, the highest number of zinc roofs or something else. But I think the allocations that we have given, I'm not going to say they are sufficient, but it is a good start to address the issues that you have. You asked, how will houses be repaired? Will it be centralized or will it be devolved? We will use a multiplicity of strategies. So some houses are going to be repaired because people will go to the NHT, get a loan, and repair their own homes. So we facilitated by those loans. Some people will get grants and they will repair their own homes. But there are other persons who have no capabilities whatsoever, and the government may very well have to undertake that. We are considering how that can be done, particularly for elderly, pregnant and lactating mothers with lots of children. So we will have to figure out how to deal with that. But then there are others who just need a grant, and they will find their way. We will provision that. And the question you asked about a centralized work team, something we are thinking about, and it is particularly of interest to the donor community, because they would like to be able to say, we have completed a building. Many of the donor communities, they would like to say the number of buildings they have repaired. And so that might be a strategy with the donor community. Possibly, that's what I'm saying. But they may want, instead of giving a contribution and somebody putting on their own roof, they may prefer to do the entire thing. So it's a multiplicity of strategies that will be used. It's not just one. Now, you raised the issue of the politicization of benefits. And the member from South St. James also said that what I presented here does not match the reality she experienced. I will not debate that point. Your experience is yours. My presentations are based on, as you have said, the reports I get from my technical people, from yourselves who send me notes and issues, and from what I have seen for myself. And therefore, what I give is a combined report, and we try as best as possible to ensure that it is credible. So if I come to Parliament and I give an incredible report, it doesn't help me. There is no benefit to give a report that does not match the reality. Now, my report may not match the reality that you experience, but it must match generally what is happening. And I give you an example of what I'm saying. The JDF, in the third day following the storm, executed a search and recovery exercise. The second day, the member from South St. Thomas West called me to say there was someone marooned in the middle of a river. Apparently he was there for overnight and his foot apparently broken. And the JDF went and conducted an exercise to retrieve him. Who knows? Is it the fact that the JDF did nothing? In other words, we won't know everything that is done. But it's my job to know everything that is done, even if I don't get everything, but it's my job. And I do try to come to the House and give as accurate as possible a report. And there are several of them. Rescues that have been done, medevac, delivery of food, all kinds of things they have done, including rappelling, many of them, because to get into some of these areas, yes, they did rappel. So, yes, to answer that point. All right, let me move quickly to... All right, you also mentioned, member from Central Westmoreland, that aid was delivered, humanitarian aid was delivered in your constituency, and the caretaker received the aid. Now, commandeer, that was his exact term. Now, let me put it to you this way. In dealing with information, Madam Speaker, you have to be so careful to give the complete picture. My understanding is that there was a delivery of humanitarian assistance where the deputy mayor represented the MP, the member from Central Westmoreland, and he collected aid. I'm saying they collected, because everybody else would have gotten 30. All the councillors got. Madam Speaker, all the councillors got. A church, was it 2 churches? So, my figures here, and we can debate the figures, I'm not debating the figures because that's not what you're debating. What you are saying is that the aid that was delivered was all taken by and that is obviously not true. So, no, look. That's not true. That's not true. Now, I don't want to quarrel over the aid, but I want accuracy. Because it is not true that the former MP just took everything. But you neglected, no, that's not, and if you say that, then, member, I would say that you are not being truthful. Because there were...
Members, Prime Minister, I know you do not need my protection.
There were 10 beneficiaries.
All the talking over there, no one hears you. No one. Member. Members, respectfully, I can't hear the responses, so unless you're not interested. Prime Minister?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. But look, I don't want to disrupt the spirit that we are building. But in the interest of accuracy, now, it raises another question. Are caretakers legitimate persons of standing and leadership in the crisis. It's a question to be asked. I have not yet answered it. It is a question, Madam Speaker, to be asked.
What's your point of order, member?
Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister is attempting to answer a question, but I think he's misleading Jamaica because what the issue at hand is that the minister called the MP and gave him some instructions. George Wright and others turned up and subverted
Member.
what was supposed to happen.
Member, that is not appreciated, member, and it keeps being done. You are not to use the House to abuse individuals outside of the House using the protection of the House, because I don't know that your information is correct. Member, and for all Prime Minister, hold on a minute, for all members, the Prime Minister sat respectfully and quietly, and he listened to every question from every member without disrupting any one of you. The Prime Minister listened to every single question, wrote them down, and is attempting to answer members. Prime Minister, I would hope that the members give you the respect that you gave them.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I close this presentation on the question that seems to be so controversial regarding the distribution of packages in central Westmoreland, 300 packages were distributed directly to the communities. My report here is that 500 packages went to political representatives, and which includes councillors who got the majority of it, and your representative, Mr. Member of Parliament. 50 went to a church, and the Ministry of Labour and Social Security did some distribution directly as well. 500 went to political representatives. So there is, the gravamen of the member's question that he asked was that aid was distributed in a political way to the exclusion of himself, and that was not accurate. All right. But I'm saying that it was not accurate. Now, Madam Speaker, South East St. Andrew. The member from South East St. Andrew asked about whether or not we have received the payments from CRIF and from the catastrophe bond. They have been approved, I understand, but we have not yet received them. But I suspect shortly, Minister, we will be receiving payments. You asked whether or not we have mobilized I'll allow the Minister to give that update to the nation. CRIF is 70, but we have seen a letter that says we will get the full payout. But let me see what we actually get. Yeah. Then you asked whether or not we have mobilized all the possible avenues of financing available from the multilaterals. And we have. We intend to utilize everything that's on the table. We have to. We have to. Northern Clarendon. Member, you asked about when will the Ministry of Health begin spring and water treatment. For your constituency, it's a matter of accessibility. So as soon as the roads are accessible, the Ministry of Health's team will be in your area. I have made a special note of this, and I have sent it to Minister Tufton. I know the areas that you're talking, they can become waterlogged very easily. You get a lot of rain even after this weather event. And so, yes, we will mobilize quickly for that area. You asked whether or not I believe funding was enough for preventative works. Well, certainly for this hurricane, no. We just didn't have enough. We couldn't do all that we wanted to. But what we have done under normal circumstances would be sufficient to help us through a hurricane, to clear major drains, clear major gullies, and so forth. So certainly not sufficient for what we were hit with, but under normal circumstances, the allocations that we make, I personally believe, are very useful for that regard. Western Westmoreland. Good question about the price of food and increases in gas and these other things. I'm happy that you have brought this to the national attention, and I have sent a note to the Minister of Commerce, Industry and Investment, and we are going to investigate this issue. The only thing is that the order that we have put in place for price gouging is limited. It's not to every single good. It's limited to food items and some essential things. So, but we will investigate this and ensure that there is enforcement, because in a time of disaster, everyone is expected to exercise good discretion in favor of the national recovery. Shelter, you raise issues about the supply of the shelters, both yourself and the member from Eastern Westmoreland. Now, in Westmoreland, there was a particular problem. The Ministry of Labour and Local Government designates the shelters and provides resources generally to the council. It is under the disaster management structure. It is the councils that are supposed to stand up and manage the shelters. The Ministry of Labour and Social Security comes in, and I just want to be clear on this, they don't necessarily do distribution. What their role is to make sure that the distribution is done properly. So their role is to make sure that they identify the people who are in need, they identify the elderly and so forth. They bring with them some aid, yes, but in a situation like this, the logistics of carrying the aid is put to the JDF because they have the capability of managing that logistics. And when they work with the soldiers too, and volunteers, their role is to make sure that there is dignity in the distribution of the aid. If anything personally hurts me, is to see people fighting over aid. Or when a truck comes in, people fighting, and we don't want that in our country. So there has to be some order and process that's quick and efficient, that allows the people who really need it to get it and to record what is given. So in Westmoreland, there was a particular problem because, unfortunately, Madam Speaker, the shelter manager had a stroke, my understanding. And so the disaster coordinator. And so it contributed to the breakdown of the management of the entire process. So that was an unfortunate incident. She passed? Oh. Okay, good. So we're happy that she has recovered or is recovering. All right. So St. Catherine, yes, goods in transit that may arrive after the cutoff date as long as they were shipped before.
Okay. That wasn't clear.
We will make that clear. Minister of Finance, we have to make that clear. You asked whether or not heavy equipment brought in for the purpose of relief. That's my interpretation. Now, what do you mean? That somebody's bringing in heavy equipment and it's going to stay here?
No, he said it's going to go.
But if it's going back, yes, there is the relief is given to them. But if it's going to stay here, we would have to take a second look at it, but right now it's no. If it's going back, they will get the relief. Yes. All right. You also asked about public health and mosquitoes. Portmore is already on our radar. You'll recall that after Beryl, there was an uptick in mosquitoes, and we were on it very quickly. So it is already planned that we will be in Portmore. Oh, sorry, remind me of that question. I didn't write it down. I couldn't answer you right now because I didn't consult with the minister. All right, Eastern Hanover. Oh yes, very important. So there is a program to give connectivity to the banks in the areas that are cut off from electricity and telecommunications. So they are working with the Banking Association to put Starlink and other forms of connectivity with the banks so that the ATMs can get back in operation. So that is, I would say in a matter of days, you will start to see banks, ATMs in particular, operational in some of these towns that have been cut off. You want to bring me into an argument about fees that, though I am personally sympathetic to you, and with the whole ideal that, you know, the banking sector should look at it as a part of national recovery, and we will use moral suasion in this regard, I couldn't here stand up in Parliament and make a policy for that. All right, Eastern Hanover. Marooned communities. When will the marooned communities be addressed? But you know, one of them was badly damaged, which we have to assess. Yes. So what I had said in my presentation, member, of the establishment of these hubs, that is the attempt to get to the marooned communities, because the hubs are not just for the storage of food and deployment, but they will have personnel. Some of them will have equipment, and they will start to cut roads and clearing ways to ensure that we get to the maroon community. So it is in action, and you will see action in your areas shortly. Northeast St. Elizabeth, paying shelter managers. Again, it's hard for me to tell you yes or no, make policy on the go, but you know, it's something that we will look at. Minister of Local Government is something that we should look at. When can we expect roof repairs and housing? I want to give you, member, I want to give you an answer, but at this point, I cannot tell you. At this point, I can say to you that we will start the deployment of the housing kits that we have, which are temporary roof solutions. They are a tarpaulin solution, and we have some temporary solutions that we will start to deploy, right? Now, that is coming through ADPEM, so that will shortly go out. We have already started the process by allocating $10 million to some MPs. No, because an important question was asked as to whether or not that could go to the CDF. This allocation is from the Ministry of Housing, and I do know the difficulty. So I give you the undertaking that I am going to look at the process involved for the hardware. The ministry takes a fee? No, not the Ministry of Housing. But I give you the undertaking that the process will be much smoother than before because we may have to utilize some emergency procedures in this regard. Provision of connectivity and Starlink. Minister Vaz isn't here, but we are working on some more Starlinks to ensure that each member of parliament can have connectivity, and we want each parish council, police station, fire station, all public installations who are not connected, we are working to bring connectivity to them through the Starlink. So each member of parliament, but the affected areas, that we are working towards that. But each affected area with the public buildings, we are looking to have a Starlink or other form of connectivity there. Eastern Portland, how needs are prioritized. So your question was, can we consider Portland as a special case, essentially? But that goes to other questions. From like the member from Northwestern St. Catherine, and of course from the Speaker's constituency, East Rural, and from Western St. Mary, and yes. So the announcements that I have made now will go along the lines as announced. But as we move with other allocations, we will start to get more granular. So we could make allocations to divisions or to constituencies, regardless of the zone that they fell in. But just for now, as I've made the presentation and I've already started the bureaucratic process, I can't turn that back. But as you have raised it, so for example, your area, the Speaker's area, we will start to look on constituencies specifically affected. I want to make another point. You raised an interesting question as to whether or not the $1.5 million makes sense, because you did the math and it would cost you $195 million to make a package for all your constituents. Member, and I'm speaking now to new members. You know, and I guess I'm going to answer the question from the member from West Central St. James as well. The role of the MP in our democracy has evolved into a service provider. It can be dangerous. Because, you know, the question is asked, you know, can we have an officer assigned? The question then, you know, why have a ministry? You know, in other words, if you have a parallel bureaucracy, now, weaknesses in the service delivery from the central government has had to be compensated by the member of parliament. Yes, subsidiarity, that principle is very important. And because you're closer, but subsidiarity, when taken to its extreme, means eventually you become independent. That's the basis on which nations are formed or different divisions are formed when you start to apply the principle. We are a unitary nation, and therefore you want to make sure that you have the central functioning, but you have, you know, departments, agencies, branch offices that are functioning, which goes to the question from the member from South St. James, whether or not there shouldn't be some special arrangements for rural constituencies. I mean, those are deep intellectual questions. I'm not proposing to answer them today, except to say, member from Eastern Portland, the amounts that we give you is not to provide for everyone in your constituency. The amounts that you get is to deal with the emergency cases that come to your attention that the central ministry cannot respond to quick enough. And MPs have to be careful how we seek to expand our roles. It is not a sustainable model. All right, let's move on. Southwest St. Andrew. The question of whether or not we should own shelters, build and own shelters. We can't. I'd answer that already. We can't build and own shelters. Because you're saying shelters are not always ideal, the ones that we select. And I agree with you. Oh, you mean, I will get some more information. I don't have enough information on that to answer you right now. But what we try to do is to select the best available shelters, which may not be the ideal shelter. We just have to make that clear. And I answered the question about devastated communities as distinct from parishes in terms of focus. Southeastern St. Anne, again, purpose-built centers, I'd answered that. Questions were asked about the Ministry of Agriculture and how prepared are we and what are we going to do. The Minister of Agriculture will make his presentation very shortly about the plans. I will say this to you, however, as I have outlined, we're going to try and get the farmers in the affected parishes up, but I think it is of great necessity that the other parishes that have not been affected, we also have to get the production in those up as well. And so we're going to be pushing very hard for that. Southeast St. Anne, I think I've answered those questions already. Ministry of Agriculture. Same thing for fisheries. You had mentioned the fisher folk in Southwest. There will be provisions for them. If you didn't hear my response, because I've already answered the questions, I'm just going through. Oh, no, we won't have an automatic trigger. We're not programmed to do that in the Ministry of Finance. No, but we are not. It couldn't, it's not precise. It's not an automatic trigger. All right. But remember, you raise an important question. Yes. Now, colleagues, members, we are going to be, the response of the government will go into Christmas without question. And so we're going to have to figure out for the parishes that have been badly affected, their entertainment, play, church, all the other elements of life during that season. So we are going to consider that carefully, how we can bring back some normalcy as we enter into that season, which is just a few weeks away. So yes, playing fields and those kinds of things, yes, we will be making provisions for. The issue of all roads to be cleared, the NAA is only treating with NAA roads. No, the NAA, what the NAA is doing now, and they have been tasked to deal with all roads. But up front, they are dealing with road corridors. So the corridor meaning, how do we get from point A to point B? That may take a main road, then you have to go onto a local road and back onto a main road. So they are going to clear corridors first. So it means that they will clear both main and local roads as they try to clear a corridor. The relaxation of CDF rules. Um, I will come back to the Parliament with an answer on that one, because we do intend to invoke some emergency procedures. We haven't finalized those emergency procedures yet. So yes, the CDF would be considered under those, but as soon as we have finalized them, we'll inform members. Sandy Gully. Member, the Sandy Gully, we have started a process to repair it. We have made some allocations, and within this year we will do some spending on the Sandy Gully. You asked about the drainage study. The drainage study for Montego Bay is complete. We will complete the drainage study for Kingston and the rest of the island next year. They're pretty advanced, I'm told. The member from Eastern St. Thomas, you asked about the planting garden, bath, and the need for river training. You notice that the member from Western St. Thomas didn't stand up and ask. Because he has been asking about this for a long time. At this point, I cannot give you a definitive answer about budget. But what I would say to you, member, is that one, we need to start encouraging those persons who are living on the riverbank there to think about relocating. And there is under the new social housing program, there is a provision where we can assist persons to relocate. Given what has happened, we very well would have to make some allocations for not just for relocation, but for the grinds, to develop some grinds. But I couldn't tell you that we could conduct an entire river training exercise for the planting garden river. That would be massive and would take away from everything else that we have to do. So yes, we will do some amount in critical areas, especially where we see it's threatening large communities. But the conversation needs to start about stepping back from that river course. All right. The honoring of shelter managers and other local heroes during this period of time. Yes, Minister Grange, this is something that so there is some program for acknowledgement. The Support Jamaica platform, and whether or not there can be designation of the donation. My understanding is that there is a way to do it, but we are going to modify the platform to ensure that it is more seamless, that you can visibly see how to designate to an institution. Now, there is already a process for schools, for example, under the net. And so I say publicly, if Jamaicans overseas want to donate directly to their school, they can do so through the National Education Trust. Similar process, they have an online process. But an important point, everything that is donated through Support Jamaica goes to ADPEM. The intention is not to take away the donations from private entities. I heard, I believe it was the leader of the opposition saying that ADPEM will take away all the donations, including what you plan to raise. That's not the case. What we are saying is, if you want to get the benefit of the reduced or waived duty, then you should send it ADPEM/whatever. And once it is recorded as a donation, ADPEM records it, then you benefit from the waiver. And if you give funds, as we have said now, we will be able to direct it. We're going to make it specific on the platform so that you can direct it. But once you bring your stuff in, even if you put it under the name ADPEM, it's yours. you can take it and do whatever you want to do with it. But it is important that the nation has a full account of everything that came in. And that's all that ODPEM is doing. Full account. Yeah, so if you can consign it to them, saying that you want to go and do your own distribution, which, by the way, that's what they're doing. That's what the entities that come in with their stuff. They don't just come in and put it in their own warehouses and go. They come in, it's assigned to ODPEM, we note it, and then they go and do what they want to do with it. But we must know. It's cleared by, yeah. Field hospitals. All charities, yes. Assign it to ODPEM so we know what is coming in. You see, that's the role of ODPEM, to manage disaster relief. But we're not talking a bag of this. We're talking large things. No, not going. We're talking container loads of stuff. All right, quickly, the member from St. Catherine Southeast raised the issue of field hospitals and whether or not field hospitals donated in COVID are still in use. My understanding is that there were 6, well, you said that there were 6 hospitals given during COVID. The checks that I have done and the answers that I have, and I'll say that these are preliminary, I'll do deeper checks, is that the field hospitals that were given were not technically field hospitals. We were given tents with some facilities, but it wouldn't reach to the level of what we have just deployed from Samaritan's Purse. And most of those are now already destroyed. The tents deteriorated, and so they're not functional. This field hospital that we have is a really superstructure, and it will last for some time, hopefully. But this is a real field hospital. Member from St. Elizabeth Northwest. Holland Bamboo. There is a plan to rebuild Holland Bamboo, even before this happened. From Hurricane Beryl, we were developing a plan to turn Holland Bamboo into the actual destination, tourist destination that it should be, which would involve formalization of the vendors and all the others who sell along that road, including up to middle quarters for the shrimp. And so we will mobilize full resources now to have Holland Bamboo as one of the rebuilt better infrastructure. Debris management. Yes, we are staging the collection of debris, including sometimes we have to get permission because we have to store it on private property, but that is already being done. So it's moving it to an area where it can be bundled and then moved from there. Yes. All right, I think I've covered.
Thank you.
I think I've covered most things. No, I've answered the mental health question even in my presentation. Yes, I'd answered it even in my presentation. And what did I forget? No, I answered that already. Yeah, no, it's in that. In my presentation, I said that under the FAA, we will be triggering the mechanism for us to why I'm so afraid to use the word. But we are going to have to make provisions to increase our ability to borrow. It's not something that I take any pleasure in doing whatsoever. But the emergency is such that we have to suspend the fiscal rules.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank
Prime
you.
Minister.
Thank you.
Announcements. Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally, questions and answers to questions, motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to the sitting of the House, motions for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained, public business, House Leader.
Madam Speaker, it is not intended to do any more business today. Let me just take the opportunity to wish